All right, thank you very much, Mallory. First, a little bit about labels. Some people call me a libertarian-leaning Republican. Some people call me a constitutional conservative. Some people say simply, he's one of the 12 that didn't vote for John Boehner. Let me quickly tell you how I got to Congress. It's a little bit of a circular path. I grew up in rural Kentucky, very rural Kentucky. Applied to MIT, got accepted, never visited the campus. Flew there for the first week of classes, started through a crosswalk in Boston, and a car honked at me, and the first thing I did was wave back at it. Because I thought they knew me. I mean, that's what you do in Kentucky when a car honks, you wave back at the car. I went on to MIT. I took economics classes along with my engineering classes. My first macroeconomics teacher, this was, I think, in 1990. Some of you may have heard of him. His name was Paul Krugman. Don't worry, I didn't drink the Kool-Aid. But he was serving a lot of it. I went to MIT to get degrees in electrical engineering and mechanical engineering, but not a degree in social engineering. So I fled macroeconomics and took microeconomics for my concentration. I invented some technology at MIT. I got 24 patents for that. I started a company, created 70 high-tech jobs, did all this with my wife, did that for 10 years, then decided to move back to Kentucky where we both grew up. We're high school sweethearts. Got ticked off. Well, first of all, I bought a farm, started raising cattle, bought a 1,200-acre farm. Life was good, had no problems, raising 50 head of cattle and 4 head of children. Read in the newspaper about a local tax initiative, then a zoning initiative, wrote a letter to the editor, got ticked off. There was no Tea Party back in 2006 when I did this. So when we showed up at local meetings, they just called it Thomas's Angry Mob. They didn't have a cute name like Tea Party yet. But we got a lot of taxes stopped. This was local. I ran for county judge executive. I got in there. I was always the dog that was chasing the bus. Somehow I ended up being the dog on the bus. So I got in the courthouse. I found all sorts of waste, fraud, and abuse. Got sort of a reputation in my area of Kentucky for that. A seat opened up in Congress. Started a 7-way primary. I was endorsed by Rand Paul, Ron Paul, Mike Lee, and virtually every Tea Party in my district, and ended up in Congress. So I want to tell you, and we'll have a discussion here in a little bit, I want to tell you 2 things that are wrong with Congress that I've discovered so far. First of all, I have to tell you how we vote in Congress. In the House of Representatives, well, in the Senate, there's 100 senators, so they go through a roll call. But in the House of Representatives, there is a card that you vote with. It's got some kind of magnetic stripe in it. I'm an electrical engineer. I'm dying to slice this thing apart and see how it works. But I'm resisted doing that. You put it in the machine and you hit yay or nay. Well, the other night I accidentally gave it to a waitress. It was dark. I thought it was my credit card. She takes it back and she swipes it. And she comes back to me and she said, "Sir, your credit card was rejected." And I said, "It can't possibly be rejected. What's wrong?" And she said, "It already has $16.9 trillion on it." I think, now the buttons are labeled yay and nay because the Constitution says you shall register the yays and nays. And they are green and red in case you forget how to read, or in case you didn't know how to read when you got to Congress. I think they should, for stop or go, I think, they should be labeled spend and don't spend. And most of the time I take some heat for pressing the don't spend button. Another quick thing that's wrong with Congress here. Some people think that the problem with Congress is there are too many ideologues, that there's too much ideology going up there. Well, I found that not to be the case. In fact, it's patently untrue that people are clinging to their ideology. In fact, they will abandon ideology and they'll abandon constituents in a heartbeat for electoral expediency. And what do I mean by that? They're thinking already about the optics of the situation before they'll vote on it, rather than the principles. I want to give you 2 examples. One is the internet tax. There's an internet tax that passed the Senate. It's headed for the House. I'm vociferously opposed to the internet tax. It'll result in it's going to result in higher taxes to consumers, and it'll result in more regulation on small businesses. So I thought it'd be easy to get all the Republicans stirred up. I started a letter to Speaker Boehner. I got a whopping 16 signatures. So the problem is everybody's position is predicated in their committee on how much money they've raised. And they're afraid to tick off the lobbyists, so they won't get with me against the internet tax. That's just part of the problem. Thank you.
Okay. Let's take some questions from the panel. First question, Mr. Steve Ducey. Let's hope that works.
I like it. Is it on? Hello. Congressman, I'm from Kansas, and we don't honk and wave, we just wave. I've got a question for you. Something in the news right now is the Snowden case. You know, nobody knows exactly where he's at. And a lot of people are conflicted because he did break the law, but now a lot of people understand to the extent which the Patriot Act may have been stretched way out of shape. And there are a lot of people who are now paranoid, but at the same time, they want the government to take care of them and keep us safe, but at the same time, should Big Brother be doing all sorts of stuff behind our backs that we don't know about, or perhaps aren't legal?
So here's, in all of these cases, you have to find what's the big issue here. In the Snowden case, and let's call it the NSA snooping case. In the snooping case, the problem here is that Mr. Clapper came to Congress 3 months before all of this leaked out and told us beyond a shadow of a doubt that he was not collecting data on millions or hundreds of millions of people. It was a blatant lie to Congress. So here's what I caution people on this issue. If you are willing to accept that it's okay for the government to lie to you for your own good, then you're going to get what you deserve. And you will never find out what happened in Benghazi. I serve on the Oversight Committee. I was there when Lois Lerner pled the Fifth. But she probably did the decent thing. A lot of people stayed around and lied to us. And if you accept the premise that it's okay for your government to lie to you, then you're in trouble.
Kellyanne Conway.
Congressman, thank you for being here. I think that you've said something along the lines that Republicans don't really want to fight against the implementation of Obamacare until after the 2014 elections. It's my view that given what happened in 2010 when they fought Obamacare and they won all the elections, that they ought to use that as a campaign issue, particularly given the October 1st trigger date this year with implementation beginning. So if we were able to gather independents, women for the first time ever voted Republican over Democrat at the congressional level, mainly because of Obamacare, why would we wait until 2014 to continue to message to the American public something that they clearly don't like or want, that they think is confusing and complex?
Well, there's two sides to this coin. There's the messaging of it, the optics, and the electoral advantages that may come with Obamacare. But then there's the principle of it. It's just bad. It's wrong. And it's irreversible once it kicks in. Here's the really disappointing thing that I'm hearing on the inside of Congress sometimes. Whenever you assemble 12 congressmen together and we talk about what we're going to trade, for instance, for another debt ceiling increase. Because the debt ceiling is going to get increased. The problem is leadership's going to come to us with a bright, shiny object and say, here, take this and vote for the debt ceiling. Well, we'd like to attach the defunding of Obamacare to the next debt ceiling deal. The problem is you have some members of Congress, some Republicans who say, no, don't delay Obamacare. This thing needs to kick in so we can win our elections in 2014. And that's the problem with Washington, D.C. That's what I said before in my speech. People will take their ideology and their constituents and throw it away for electoral expediency. So I think we should vociferously oppose Obamacare. We shouldn't worry so much about what it's going to be at the ballot box. Let's do it on principle. Thank you.
David Martosco.
You just mentioned bringing 12 congressmen together for something. You know they have a flock of seagulls, a pride of lions. My wife's an opera singer, and we call it a giggle of sopranos. And then for congressmen, we call it a quarrel of congressmen.
I call them Congress critters.
Oh, God, me too. No offense. I would love to have a status update, very quick status update on three things. First of all, the status of whether or not there's been a determination Lois Lerner waived her Fifth Amendment privilege by offering an opening statement in that hearing. The second thing, if there's been any movement toward getting access to congressmen to the survivors of Benghazi. And then lastly, are you guys going to hold Boehner to the idea of not advancing an immigration bill until a majority of the majority can agree on it?
Well, there have been 3 times since I've been in Congress that the Hastert rule has been violated. Once that's the majority of the majority. Once was with Plan B, I think once was for Sandy funding, and once was the Violence Against Women Act. We have a horrible track record of holding the Speaker accountable to the majority of the majority rule. On immigration, the Senate has a Gang of 8 that's got all this attention. The House had a Gang of 8. And I hate to say I've got friends in Congress, but I do have friends in Congress. When people say, are you making any friends up there? I say, only with the 9% you approve of. But one of those 9% was Raul Labrador, and he was on the Gang of 8 in the House. And I said, Raul, this guy, he is a really good conservative. I said, if you're okay with it, I'm probably going to be okay with it, and I'm glad you're involved. Well, the other day it became the Gang of 7, and Raul Labrador dropped out. So I'm not hopeful for something to pass on immigration. Lerner taking the 5th, I think she had the right to do that. I don't think she should keep her job at this point. I think we should, and people are missing the big picture here on the IRS issue, by the way. The big picture here is there's 70,000 pages of tax code. The Republicans are just as wrong as the Democrats if we think we could just hire the right 100,000 bureaucrats to make 70,000 pages of code work. That's the failed premise that everybody's clinging to, that we just got 3 or 4 bad apples here. That's not what happened. The thing is way too bloated. Instead of worrying about Lois Lerner or whether it went back to the White House or what they were doing wrong, let's gut the tax code and start over. And on the Benghazi thing, again, if we accept the premise that the government can lie to us, the NSA can lie to us, then you better just accept the answer that you're never going to find out what happened in Benghazi. But we are taking depositions right now in the Oversight Committee. They're not televised or anything like that, so there'll be more to come out on Benghazi.
Thank you.
See you again.
Congressman, in the mainstream media, one of the frequent narratives is that if the Republican Party ever wants to win a presidential election, they've got to pass something regarding immigration. And, there are millions of people here in the country, and you've got to do something with them. Do you believe that, though? Do you think that something has to happen this time, or if you hurry, there could be great peril ultimately?
Well, I've heard this before. We have to pass something now. And that was the best reason they had for passing something bad. And that happened with the fiscal cliff deal. We have to pass it now, or Republicans are going to get a black eye in the media and across the country. And so they passed a fiscal cliff deal that raised taxes and increased spending. So on immigration, no, I think there's time. There's plenty of time here on immigration. Let's do this right. And because if you do it wrong, you don't get a second chance.
Let's take some questions from the audience.
He's got the microphone there now.
Who has them? Okay, let's go right over here. The gentleman just stood up.
Yeah, I'll go all the way around.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to say I was proud to be part of the gang that went down to Washington, D.C. last week and stood in front of Congress. And I just want to say that the people that all got together and went down there, most of us, or many of us, went down there 5 years ago. We went down there when we went up against the health care bill. We've had it. We've had it. We don't want to hear what difference does it make. We don't want to hear that we're going to
love your question, though.
The question is, what can we do? What can we do to send a loud message to the Republican Party that they have to get the spine and the guts and stand up to these people? I don't want to. Thanks. What do we do? What do we do out here? We've had it.
Here's what I tell people at my town halls. I would not send letters, but I would make phone calls. If you can melt their phone lines, they're going to pay attention. A congressional office typically only gets 8 to 10 phone calls a day. At least that's all I'm getting. If they got 100 phone calls in a day, they would sure pay attention. And when I'm on the floor of the House and I have to vote on an issue, people are legitimately undecided, the congressmen, when they have to vote. And I've been in that situation too. But they'll turn to me and say, how many phone calls are you getting on this issue for and against? So they are definitely listening. You hold the ultimate power. So let them hear you.
Yes, the lady over there. Please stand up.
Thank you. With so many scandals going on, what happened to Fast and Furious? Really? I mean, there's a family there that wants to know what happened.
And I have to be honest with you, all of the oversight and those sort of things that happen on Fast and Furious happened right before I got to Congress. So I'm not sure where Fast and Furious is. But as far as these scandals go, this is like termite damage in a house. These termites were acting before the election, and all the damage was hidden. And it's damage to our Constitution, it's damage to our country. And we're just now pulling back the drywall, and we're seeing how damaged this house is. And it is extensive. And it was obvious it was going on before the election. It was concealed to get after the election. But it's a long book. There are many chapters to it. Let's read every chapter and not jump to the conclusion. But I'd like to see some resolution on that too.
Thomas Massie from the 4th Congressional District of Kentucky. Thanks for joining us here at the New York meeting. Appreciate it.